We are back, episode 4 of finishing series I'm in the middle of. The series where I confront my bad decisions, half-read series, and the emotional fallout of never knowing how these end. The series started with 58 unfinished series, and that is not just a number, that's a desperate cry for help. Through the past couple of months, I have chewed my way down to 29 unfinished series, which means I have either grown as a person or unhauled like there's no tomorrow. This episode, more drama, more finales, and quite a bit of disappointment. Welcome friends to finishing series I am in the middle of, episode 4. Here with a late night update because I just finished the first series of the vlog. It's a little bit gaggy. It's not a full book. It's a manga series. I'm doing a little bit of a cheat to start out, but Cat Massage Therapy Volume 3 is the very last volume I had of the Cat Massage Therapy series, and I've been reading the series for a little over a year now. I've been saving this last volume for this video specifically, so I figured why not start out the video with this and then move on to some denser texts, if we will. This series is equal parts wholesomeness as it is very unserious and kind of weird, but I have genuinely loved every second of it. It's the perfect series if you want to stimulate your brain a little bit with reading whilst turning it off completely and reading something that is purely just vibes. We follow our main character Nikoyama, who after a very long and tiring day at work decides that he is going to wind down with a professional massage. Upon entering the parlor, he realizes that the masseuses are actually cats, so they're the meowsers. Again, very unserious. And he quickly becomes obsessed with the art of cat massage therapy, the purring, the paws, the biscuit making. Everything about it is adorable. Everything about it is every bit as relaxing as you would think that it would be. Throughout the series, we not only see Nikoyama get massages time and time again, but we also see the very same cats go on site to the company he works for to give all of the employees massages. We see them bring on an assistant manager, an aromatherapy cat. We see them bring in kittens and different forms of massages and therapy so that they can appeal to all different customers. And in this particular volume, they have a little bit of competition with a dog massage parlor, and it's every bit as ridiculous and funny and fun and cute and adorable as you would think that it is. There is truly nothing else to say about this other than if you pick this up, it's just vibes. There is no plot to this. There is no substance to this. You're just walking in to see some cat cuteness overload. And sometimes that's all you need. So safe to say I'm giving this 5 stars because I don't know how else to rate this because all of them have been consistently the same. You kind of get the same thing in 3 different volumes, but I'm not mad about it. But now for the first official book that I'm going to be reading in this vlog, very important hefty reading. Throne of Secrets by Kerry Maniscalco. This is the second book in the Princess of Sin series. I DNF'd the Kingdom of the Wicked series by her, but then I read Throne of the Fallen and I loved it. I thought it was an amazing way to make a comeback with a spin-off companion series, and all of these are standalone, so they can be read individually. You'll obviously get tiny little spoilers for other books in the series, but nothing that'll make the rest of the journey unappealing in my opinion. So this one follows Prince of Gluttony, while the first one follows the Prince of Envy, and I am hoping that this will hit the exact same way that book 1 did because I really enjoyed my time with it. So I am sincerely hoping we can do that all over again with Throne of Secrets so that I can also figure out by the time that Throne of Nightmares comes out, which is the 3rd book in the series, if I do want to continue reading this or if Throne of Secrets will be my last tango with Kerry Maniscalco and the series in particular. Because she did it once, but can she do it again? And that goes both ways. Can she do a DNF again? Or can she do a success again? And I guess we'll find out together. I've been reading Throne of Secrets by Carrie Maniscalco, and I am on chapter 17, which is page 194, so nearly 200 pages in. And I have to say, while I'm enjoying this, I think there are aspects of the plot that haven't fully convinced me yet. Ice dragons are a huge part of this plot, and I just don't know that the description and the way that Carrie Maniscalco is developing that side of the world and the plot and the book's conflict is my personal favorite, but there are things outside of it that I am really enjoying. To give you the lowdown of what this book is about, we follow Prince Gluttony and his arch nemesis, a journalist called Adriana St. Lucian, and these two have had a rivalry for over a decade. He is a rake, he is incorrigible, he is known to overindulge as his hint calls for, while Adriana is determined to bring him down and report on all of his madness and all of his dirty little secrets. At the start of the book, we find out that there is growing tensions between House Gluttony and that of the ice dragons residing on the north side of the demon realm, an event that Gabriel Axton, the Prince of Gluttony, has kept secret from his entire court as well as his brothers, the other princes of sin. Adriana, upon finding out, is determined to not only uncover exactly what's going on, but to make sure that the rest of the court is fully informed on what's happening, and the real complications start when Axton decides to hold a matchmaking competition to see if he can find a wife, all truly with the intent of distracting the people from what's actually happening with the ice dragons and to deter Adriana from finding out the truth of what's happening because he hasn't uncovered the full ploy himself. Things that are working for me so far are the dynamics between Gabriel and Adriana. I think it's really engaging to see them verbally spar and to antagonize each other, see how much tension and chemistry they have, especially without them realizing just how well matched they are. I think that to me is the strongest part of the book, and that there is this whole lady whistle down plot as well to the story. It's very Cinderella coded as well, which I was not expecting it to be. That aspect has also been enjoyable. There's this evil stepmother figure, and we know that Adriana as a character is very committed to taking care of her sister because their father passed away some time back. What's not working so well for me is the whole ice dragon conflict. I feel at times, despite recognizing how big the stakes are and how this will dictate how peaceful the demon realm overall is, I don't think the description services this plot too well. I think the way that Carrie Maniscalco often describes things, specifically with this aspect of the plot, feels a little silly and under-described to me at times, and I feel also the way she drops information a lot of the time in this book falls into dumping it onto the reader, which I don't particularly love, and that goes for all things, not only the ice dragon plot, which we are told a lot about because there's a lot of history prior to the start of the book, but also a lot of Adriana's backstory. We're not getting any flashbacks in this book, which I think would be a really great tool to illustrate Adriana's past, not only with Gabriel, but also with her father and other relevant figures in her life. But we are told how she feels about certain things, certain people, certain situations. We are told of her relationship with certain people and how strong these relationships were and how formative they were in her life. But we don't get to see any of that, which I do think takes away from the experience a little bit. But overall, the book is enjoyable. It is easy to read, and I am having a good time. I just have some gripes with the narrative structure and the way that Carrie Maniscalco has chosen to go about the storytelling. I'm a little bit conflicted at this moment in time, not knowing what to do with this because I am enjoying half of it, but there's the other half where I am having issues just with the structural integrity of the book. So I am gonna keep reading, do a little bit of fuck around and find out, and we'll see where that takes me. Hopefully somewhere with a good payoff. Can we also just appreciate the bookmark for a second? It's a dog in a crock. Look at it. It's so cute. was indeed entertaining, but I don't know that it was worth finishing. I just read the last 50 pages of Throne of Secrets by Kerry Maniscalco, and I don't know. I think this book is gonna end up being anywhere between a 2.5 star to a 3 star. I stay in agreement with my past self in that the Ice Dragon plot, even though it came around full circle and it connected to other things in the plot and it was somewhat well thought out, I think that entire bit of the plot just felt poorly written, in my opinion, that I was never truly engaged in any of the bits regarding this internal war between all of the demon princes and then the ice dragons. I found myself caring very little for that aspect of the plot, and then the part that I did care about the most, which was the matchmaking contest and Prince Gluttony putting up this front that he is attempting to find a wife in order to keep the people distracted. And the way that bit wrapped up was very cheesy, which is not to the book's detriment, but I just don't enjoy that sort of writing, which feels very fairy tale-y, especially when it's wrapped up in a nice pretty bow by the end. And also the way the book wraps up Adriana and Gabriel's conflict, their hatred, their animosity, I found to be, in my experience, very predictable and also underwhelming. I feel the way it is explained at the end takes away any severity from it, and it's never really given the amount of importance that I feel it should, mostly because the entire series since Kingdom of the Wicked has been really emphasizing that anything in regards to a specific item that resides in this world, not only is it a crime to wield them to such a huge extent, but they also hold so much power over the demon princes that whenever you come to a head at the end of the book and you find out exactly what happened, it just didn't feel as weighed to me as it should have, and I am so sad for it. And I feel a lot of the most important events in this book feel like that. They are either overblown in terms of their importance to kind of give the reader a red herring and kind of throw the reader off, but it's so overplayed and so overdone that you can tell, or at least I could tell in my experience, that that wasn't going to be the big conflict or the big reveal. And then the bits that were a big reveal just didn't feel that well written to me. They felt undermined by the author. And just overall, I think this book really suffers from telling too much to the reader. It over-explains so much of its text that it makes me feel like I'm getting no credit at all as I am reading, and I really dislike that in a book. I hate when indirectly an author calls me dumb enough to not understand what's happening, and so things have to be explained twice over by the characters, because apparently nobody can bear the idea of the reader coming up to their own conclusions, and that was probably the most infuriating part of the book. I also thought at times that Kerry Maniscalco didn't do the best job at transitioning from scene to scene in this book, and the way that she did so at times, when it didn't merit feeling that way, felt a little bit disorienting and unimportant to what was happening at that point in time in the plot. She moves through scenes very quickly sometimes in a way that made me feel like the moments I was reading about weren't really that important and were just filler to get to the important bits, and I never want to feel that way when I'm reading a book. So overall, the book was entertaining, yes, hence why I finished it, but I really do stand my ground with the book structurally could have used a lot of editing, a lot of changes, and I think she focused a little too much on that fairy tale feeling, that fairy tale ending, whilst neglecting what could have been the most interesting aspects of the book. There were so many things in here that were supposed to be devastating for everybody involved, and at no point were there consequences or consequences felt. And I think to me that's the biggest disappointment, because she ends up undermining her own text and her own stakes that she has willingly included in here, and I still don't know how to fully feel about it, to be very honest. I also don't know what this means for me and the rest of the series. I know technically each book is its own standalone, so I don't have to bear Adriana or Gabriel again. Will I be that interested in reading Throne of Nightmares by the time that that comes out? I know it follows Prince Sloth, which is said to be a big bookworm in this world, huge strategist, has a huge library, and maybe I could be enticed, convinced volumes. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to make decisions once that book is closer to its release, because I thought it came out this year, but it turns out it comes out next year. So the choice will have to be made closer to the date. That said, I think I could use a little bit of a palate cleanser in between this book and the next hefty reading we are going to do, because when I say hefty reading, I really do mean we're about to do some hefty reading, and you'll see why when we get there. But for right now, I think A Sign of Affection Volume 11 is calling my name. This is the latest volume in the series. I do need to catch up because the next volume is coming out in, I think, December. So might as well get this read, even though it doesn't finish a series technically. It at least gets me caught up because I love this one and I don't want to fall behind. Your Honor, I love them. I love them. It should be illegal how obsessed I am with Yuki and Itsuomi, but I swear every volume just gets better. This has been one of those manga series that surprisingly has remained consistent all throughout. I think there's been just one volume that I might have rated 3 stars, but outside of that, every volume has been 5 stars. I love the way that Sumorishita, the author, is going about developing Yuki and Itsuomi's connection, their relationship, how they're both experiencing first with each other, but they're not shying away. I love how there's such good communication between the two of them in their relationship, and that the effort for each other is so consistent all throughout the series. Now I need him to go back to Platinum Blonde because that is the vibe. However, if you don't know what A Sign of Affection is about, this is volume 11. We still follow the same characters, Yuki and Itsuomi, who by chance meet on a train ride home. They are incidentally in the same college and kind of run around the same circle of friends, but they have never chanced upon each other up until the start of the series. We see them both take interest in each other for very different reasons. Yuki takes a lot of interest in Itsuomi because not only is he very attractive, but he is well-traveled, he speaks different languages, and that is something that interests her as somebody who has lived her life almost in a very sheltered way in Japan, and Itsuomi as somebody who cares very deeply about other people and wants to always expand his horizons to new experiences, new cultures, new languages. Very quickly gravitates towards Yuki because she is deaf and speaks mostly through sign language, and there is a challenge aspect to their relationship at first, which at first is very much just a friendship, which is the fact that he doesn't speak sign language, but again, as he takes a lot of interest in that and he has a genuine interest in her as a person, he takes up learning sign language. The two end up hanging out, and at this point in the series, they are officially together as a couple and making a lot of those first big steps that couples do, especially when you're in college and you can make big grown adult decisions. And I love that despite the fact that he is so well traveled and he seems to know the world far better than Yuki does, they are at the exact same point in their relationship experiencing these things together. Neither of them have professed I love yous before in relationships. None of them have lived together with a couple, spent so much time with a significant other that way, or even really been that interested in having a relationship relationship. So I love that he doesn't seem like this overly experienced sort of guy who is gonna teach her the ropes. They are learning these things together. And though at times he might be a little bit quicker to catch on to what he's feeling or the experiences that they are having, they really are walking this side by side at the exact same spot. And I love that. And in this volume, we got, I think, much needed backstory for Itsuomi specifically, who in a way has remained sort of mysterious throughout the series. Even though they are together and even though they do know each other, there are certain aspects of his past that Yuki had not been privy to because he hadn't shared. And so I really loved seeing a more vulnerable, candid side to Itsuomi, which at times I do think outside of the parameters of their relationship can seem so unattainable because of everything he has done and experienced. And so I genuinely loved that vulnerable moment that they had in the second half of this volume. And then we also got backstory for Oishi, which, listen, I know this guy is probably a very controversial figure. This is one of Yuki's friends. Can we call him a friend, an acquaintance, a classmate? I'm not sure. It's this one guy that has always been present in Yuki's life, and he has been very taunting of her for the entirety of them knowing each other, but it's because he has a crush on her, and he's that emotionally unintelligent sort of guy who doesn't really know how to speak to Yuki. And so whenever he wants to say something nice and give her a compliment, what ends up coming out is, are you really gonna do that? Are you really gonna say that? And he ends up mocking her instead, which obviously leads him nowhere. But we do see a lot of his backstory, which we have been getting over the past couple of volumes. So it's been nice to see that this isn't just this annoying guy who feels sort of possessive over Yuki, but rather somebody who does deeply care about her. He just doesn't quite know how to express it. And I have to say, even though he was very unlikable for the majority of the volumes I have read so far, I do think there's a certain aspect of humanity that we are adding to his character that at times kind of makes me feel for the dude. Like, it's kind of sad. So I really enjoyed this volume. I'm giving it 5 stars. I had a great time, and I love that I'm caught up because I never want to fall behind with this series, so that when the next volume comes out in December, I'm all good and ready to go. Which, listen, for the series that are still ongoing and I am caught up in, with manga specifically, I might just use these finishing series vlogs as a means to actually catch up with these series. So for this one specifically, A Sign of Affection, if in December I end up doing, which I might actually do, a finishing series vlog, I might just include volume 12 in that one so that I don't fall behind. And now we are jumping into the hefty reading. And the reason why I've been saying hefty reading, which Throne of Secrets was a 500-page book, is because this next section we are entering is essentially a 3-book section. And it sounds a lot worse than it actually is, but I am talking about the Secret Shanghai series by Chloe Gong, which means that the next thing we are diving into is Last Violent Call by Chloe Gong, which are the 2 novellas that separate Foul Lady Fortune and then Foul Heart Huntsman. And we have got A Foul Thing, which is the first novella, and then we have got this Foul Murder. And you would notice, if you know anything about the Secret Shanghai series, that the characters depicted here are not the characters that we see in Foul Lady Fortune. These are actually novellas that connect to the first half of the Secret Shanghai series. Roma and Juliet are the characters of the first one, and then Benedict and Marshall are the ones from the second one. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up annotating these because you do not know. If you've been a part of my channel for a while, then you know how obsessed I was with this series back in the day, but I went through it with the second book, okay? So reuniting with these characters is very exciting to me, but it's also going to be a very emotional ride. In this one, as soon as the word Dorogaya is dropped, I am going to be a goner. So I just need to let you know in advance, I am going to bawl my eyes out very shortly. actually have not updated this vlog in about a week and a half, y'all. It's been a little bit, but I do come bearing updates for you in terms of 2 books that I finished, and then another one that I am making quite a bit of progress with. The first 2 obviously being the 2 novellas that comprise Last Violin Call by Chloe Gong. I did finish both of these basically back to back, and then I never updated you guys on this because I was trying to figure out how exactly to talk about this without giving out a spoiler for the first half of the Secret Shanghai series. And so I am going to keep this very brief so that I avoid spoiling you guys, because I do think the rewarding nature of this novella is believing or not believing something that happens toward the end of Our Violin Ends, and then figuring out exactly what happens or doesn't happen at the end that then leads to these novellas that do connect to Fallheart Huntsman. And I guess getting that bit of reward and domesticity and a little bit more fluff, because these are fluff novellas, and it was honestly really cool. I think it was nice. I don't think that as part of the whole series these are wholly necessary, but I think that if you do feel attachment to these characters and you do care about them a ton and you just want to see them happy, I do think these added little books are a nice little bonus. I don't think they're wholly necessary, but they do end up adding context for the last full book in the whole series, the Secret Shanghai series. To not make it too complicated, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I, again, don't want to speak too much about it in fear of spoiling some of you guys. Some people would consider it a spoiler, some would not. I know Chloe, the author, tends to talk about these like pretty spoilery in her socials, and so if you have seen any promotionals when this book came out or shortly after, then she does explicitly say what these books follow and what they're setting up and what the purpose of the novellas are. I, however, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna try and be very responsible here. That said, however, I have started Fallheart Huntsman, and I have been reading this book for literally a week and a half, and I have just broken into chapter 37, which is page 323. This book is about 545 pages long, I think. So I have about, give or take, a little over 200 pages left. And I'm not going to lie, I am not loving this as much as Foul Lady Fortune, but the book is still really well written. I still am having a good time with it. I think it's just taking a long time to set up the wrap up of the series, and we're having to bring so many different characters together because now we do have quite an expansive cast of characters in comparison to book 1, or even in comparison to these Violent Delights. And so we're having to bring a lot of people together, coordinating exactly how they're going to meet and the reasons why. We are going to now enter the big end, which is going to be super explosive and it's very high stakes. And so the entire book is taking a lot of care to make sure that whatever happens at the end makes sense. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Last Violin Call has made me really hopeful that this is gonna have a happy ending, because Chloe Gong has proved that she is capable of a happy ending, and that makes me very happy. However, this, I am hoping, fingers crossed, ends well, because so far, it's been low-key kind of sad for all the characters involved. People keeping secrets from each other, there is amnesia in the plot, people not being super forthcoming about their feelings, and also conflicting feelings because they're in the middle of a war and they're trying to figure out where exactly to space these things, because there's so much at stake that at times that romance really doesn't take the forefront of anything, because they're figuring out how to stay alive and to make sure that their own political side come out on top. So all in all, the Foul Lady Fortune duology, which is part of the bigger Secret Shanghai series, follows our main 2 characters, Rosalind and Orion, who have to go undercover at Sea Green Press to figure out a Japanese imperialist ploy that the nationalist party, the Kuomintang, is very concerned with. There are several moving parts to book 1 as to the very mysterious entity, the very mysterious persona that is Priest, this communist assassin that makes an appearance every once in a while. There are also a series of serial murders that seem to be somewhat tied to Sea Green Press, and they have to figure out exactly the reasons why and how everything connects to each other. And all of this is happening not only as the nationalist and communist parties are at war with each other internally in China, but there is also Japanese invasion in Manchuria, which in 1931, which is the setup of Our Lady Fortune, is the start of a period of war that essentially leads up to the Sino-Japanese War. So we're seeing very real, very prevalent, important historical details be woven into that more fantasy narrative. And those aspects I really enjoyed about the series. Anything to do with politicking in a fantasy world, especially as it mirrors our real world, are all things that I tend to really enjoy, which is why this series has gone so successfully for me. I think Chloe Gong does a really great job at critiquing real life events in a way that is very tactful for younger audiences, but that still maybe sheds light on events that maybe are not taught in school so often, or material that kids won't get to see for a while. And it's also the type of series that gives a lot of credit to the reader so that you can read in between the lines, and all of those things I really, really enjoy. Again, I think the pacing in the second book is a little bit tedious, and the book is quite long, but I do understand, again, all of those points I mentioned earlier about having to bring all these characters together, make sure that all of these threads work in tandem together in a way that makes sense. I do think part of the reason why I'm feeling I don't know, so itchy, I guess, to finish this book, or so itchy and that I haven't finished this book yet, is just the way that my last week has gone. Like, it's been a very challenging week, mentally, physically, all the things. And so I feel I have entered a point where I'm like, I would love to move on to something else, but that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying my time with this. It's just going a little bit slower than I would have liked or anticipated. But I do think that it is still leading up to round out the series in a really nice way. So far, it's feeling like a 3.5 to a 4-star book, but I still have 220 pages left, which is a big chunk of the book. And I do think anything can happen at this point in time. I could read 100 more pages and be like, guys, this is the best thing I've read ever. So you never really know with me. So I'll obviously keep you guys updated as I keep on reading. But at this point in time, just know I have been in this section of the vlog for a long time, and I am hoping to make more progress over the next 2 days to see if maybe I can finish out Falhart Huntsman and figure out what this is going to be at the end and how the story is going to wrap up, and if we're going to get a happy ending and all the good things, because at this point in time, I've got no idea. And again, anything can happen. So I'll keep you updated on this, but I thought I'd pop in and talk about these things that I've been reading for quite some time. And I just realized as I'm sitting here and prepping a bunch of content that I filmed today, I had not updated y'all, and that is a crime against humanity. So I'm happy that I did so. I'm happy that we get to check that off the list, and I'll come back when I have anything else to say. At risk of looking a little bit more disheveled than I would like, I washed my hair this morning, had a little everything shower, so we're looking a little bit not put together. However, I did finish Falhart Huntsman this morning. And while I did enjoy this book, oh my god, I think I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I think this book is a perfect example of what happens when an author takes on too much at once, tries to do something very ambitious and then chickens out at the very end, likely because they don't know how to wrap it up. And that's the impression the book gives me. That might have not been the exact case, but I do think the entire saga builds up to do something so epic, so big, and so almost unachievable and unattainable for our characters, who for the most part are on the younger side. You know, they're involved in not only a civil war in China between the two most prominent political parties at the time, but they are also fighting Japanese invasion, and it's just so much to take on at once. And although they are spies and assassins and snipers, and there's just so much going into like their background and their abilities, I just think it is simply not something they can take on by themselves, because there's a greater political agenda happening behind the scenes that cannot be tackled on by just a group of maybe 6 people at once. So I definitely was very disappointed with the way that the book panned out at the end. I also think that overall the book was just very convenient for our protagonist, and although I do like the way that the book wrapped up, and what I said earlier that the book might have a potential happy, good ending, although I did like that, I do think that some things just happen very easily for our characters, and there's very little resistance felt when it comes to certain outcomes. I also think some of the reveals and some of the plot twists were very underwhelming. I think a lot of the hurdles that we experienced throughout the book felt very inconsequential almost, because the characters were like, I got this. In fact, I have been untied for 3 days. I just pretended otherwise. And although, again, I trust their abilities and I know that they are capable of so many amazing things, because we have seen that repeatedly throughout the greater Secret Shanghai series, I just don't know that it comes across as believable sometimes. And the experience overall needs to have this almost suspend of disbelief to make sure that we kind of go along with what's happening here. And I think that aspect of the experience I didn't love so much, because what I loved about this is that although it is fantasy, I think adheres more to a historical genre, a historical tone, and everything that happens within the parameters of the story, even though it might have fantastical elements, it still feels grounded in reality, and it still feels like it might be something that happens. And this book to me didn't quite feel like that all throughout. And I think although the writing is on par with her prior releases in that it's the same voice, it's the same writing style, and at least that aspect is consistent, I do think the plot, the world building, and the way that the story pans out, and the twists and the reveals and everything, I don't think that aspect was so clean. And I don't know, it was definitely not my favorite. I'm so sad, because I definitely wanted to love this more than Foul Lady Fortune. You guys know how much I love reading duologies and enjoying the second book more than I did the first one, but that was simply not the case for this. And although I'm very happy for Oliver and Celia and Silas and Phoebe and Elisa and Orion and Rosalind, obviously, I'm happy for all of our characters and the way that each of their stories wrapped up individually. I think to me, this book read a lot more younger than Foul Lady Fortune. I think Foul Lady Fortune feels almost like a cuspy book where it's young adult, but I think at times it has a more mature voice, right? And it doesn't feel so geared towards maybe 13, 14-year-olds, but it feels like an older spectrum YA where everything's fleshed out nicely and you get some nice, political work in terms of the world and what's happening and the landscape, and you get some really good characters. This to me felt more character driven, which is not something that I tend to dislike, but I didn't like it under the context of the characters were behaving, I think, in a way that came across more immature, and I was not expecting that per se, just based on how the first book came around. So it was either the characters truly being very overconfident in their abilities or acting very childishly, and I think that just dissonance between ability and maturity, which one doesn't have anything to do with the other, but just based on what we've observed of these characters in the past, it just didn't really seem like that consistent to me. And also, I don't know about the lack of character growth that I saw in this book. And by lack of character growth, I mean I was expecting certain specific things to happen with Rosalind's character, especially at the end of the book with how everything pans out, specifically in her relationship with Orion and the way that things happened with no clear outspokenness about certain feelings, if we will. If you get it, you get it. I was very perplexed because I thought the entire series would lead up to her finally being able to open up, finally being able to, you know, state her emotions very clearly. And the fact that that was never the case, I don't know that I love that, because even though she is at a spot where she can receive this love and this support without feeling guilt over it anymore, the fact that she still struggles to outwardly, outspokenly say things is not something that I was expecting at the end of the series, just based on everything that we went through. I thought there would have been maybe some more progress, some more resolution to that aspect of, I guess, her character flaws, and we didn't. And so I'm kind of disappointed in that as well. So yeah, overall, again, the writing is consistent, it's easy to read, but this did take me 16 days to get read, which is part of the infuriating nature of my read of this book, because that took way too long, and Foul Lady Fortune did not take that long, and the other books in the series didn't either, so this definitely took me by surprise, and I can't say it was necessarily an all good one, and that makes me so deeply sad. But that is it for today, friends. That is this episode of finishing series I am in the middle of. At least we knocked out a couple, which is a very good. All in all, 6 books read, which is very good for a single video. I can't remember the last time I read 6 different things in a single vlog, so I think that in and of itself is a success. 1 series finished, 2 series finished, and 2 series that I caught up on. So we have got 2 and 2, which is not bad at all. I still don't know what I'm gonna do about Princess of Sin. I'm not sure that I'm gonna read Throne of Nightmares or not, so we'll figure that out when the time is due. But 6 books read, a couple of chunkers, and a lot of progress on my series list, and that makes me very happy. So if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below. Comment down below if you have read any of these series. If you finished the Secret Shanghai series, I would absolutely love to know. If you guys enjoyed Fall Heart Huntsman, if you didn't, how you felt about the series wrap up. I think that makes me so curious, because I obviously can't say that I've heard of so many people reading this sub-series in comparison to these Violent Delights, but I would love to know if you guys did, what you thought about it. But in general, if you have read any of these, do let me know in the comments. Let us leave some phone emojis for Last Violent Call, and specifically like the red actual telephone that you can pick up. That one, that's the one I want in the comments if you reach to the very end. And if you're currently reading many series, let a girl know what are your ongoing ones or ones that you are prioritizing very soon. Would love to know if you're like me and keep putting off finishing series because it seems too daunting a task. I would love to know that as well. Subscribe down below if you haven't done so already for more content like this. And as always, I would like to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to all of my patrons who support the channel consistently. I love you guys the mostest. You guys are the absolute best. I truly appreciate every single bit of support that you guys throw my way. If any of you guys want to check out Patreon, it is always linked down below. It is a huge way to help out the channel outside of watching the videos entirely and liking and commenting and subscribing and doing all the things that you are already very familiar with. If you do decide to pledge to Patreon, there are a ton of different benefits, so you can check them out over at the link in the description. We have got tons of extra live shows, a Discord server, a book club, and just a ton of fun that you might not want to miss. So that is there if you guys want it. I love you guys the mostest, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye!